Hello there everyone and welcome to another edition of Lydia's Crafty Corner with me, Lydia, in my little crafty corner. So today we are going to be creating this card and it features a beautiful faux inlay die cut technique as well as some stacked die cuts as well. So here we go and let's get into it. So to start, I'm going to be using the Fragrant Flowers Die Set, and we're going to be using this beautiful intricate die, and you can see just how big it is here. So this is going to be the one that we're going to be using, and we are only going to use one of these. We are going to cut it multiple times, but there is only going to be one image at the end. So to start with, what I'm going to do is I am actually going to emboss the die image into a piece of cardstock. So I'm just placing that into place onto a piece of cardstock, and underneath that I have an embossing mat. So this is going to mean that it's not going to be able to cut the design, and it's just going to emboss that into the cardstock, and this is going to give us a kind of guideline to where we are going to color the elements, and that's the reason why I'm doing this. And this is what's going to be able to give us that faux inlay die cut look without having to kind of just color in each of those little pieces and then pop them back in. So once I have my little guide on my cardstock, what I'm going to do is I'm going to colour in the elements. So for the flower centres, I'm going to use two artist markers. The first one that I used was the Snapdragon. And all I'm doing with that one is I'm adding some colour right into the centre of the flower centre. And then I'm going to colour around that using the chamomile ink. So that's the chamomile artist marker, sorry, not the ink, the artist marker. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to colour in the little, I think these are kind of tulip flowers or bell flowers, and I'm going to colour those in a pink colour. I'm going to start by adding some darker shade right at the base of each of the petals, and for that one I'm using the Rubellite marker. Once I have done all of the darker shade, I'm then going to go to the mid-tone, and this is the Pinkalicious, and I'm adding that right in the center of the kind of flower petals. And then last off, I'm going to go in with the Pink Diamond to color over the whole of the little tulip shape, and that is going to give us that beautiful blend at the end. So I'm just adding in one marker, or using, one marker at a time. So I'm going to add in that darker tone at the bottom, then the mid-tone, and then the lighter one all over the petals. Once I've finished with the pink tulips, I'm then going to move on to my daisy flowers. Now these have more of a pointed point on the petals for the larger ones. So there are two different types of daisies on the image. We have the pointed petals and then also the smaller rounded petals. So we're going to go with the larger flowers with the pointed petals. So for these ones, I'm going to go in as before, and I'm going to add in the darkest shade right at the base of the petal. So the one that I'm using right at the minute is the Teal Cave marker, and then I'm going to move on to the mid-tone once I've added all of in the darker shading. So for this mid-tone here, I'm going to be going in with the Aqualicious artist marker, and as you can see, I'm going over the one that I've just done, so the one with the Teal Cave, and I'm bringing that kind of colour or the shade up towards the tip, and we're just colouring in the centre point of each of these petals that we have here. Now there are a couple, and it does take a little bit of time, but I do think that it looks very, very pretty in the end. So once I've finished with the darker and the mid-tone, I'm then going to move on to the lightest or the highlight shade that we have. And the one that I'm using is the Dewdrops artist marker. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to colour in the whole of the petal that we have, even over the darker bits, and this is going to blend everything together perfectly. Now don't be afraid if you do kind of go over the embossed image that we have here, what that we're colouring in. If you go onto the kind of sunken in bit on the cardstock, the debossed area on the image, don't worry too much. Now that is going to be covered over later on, so you don't need to worry about getting things perfect. But what you don't really want to do is colour in any other kind of embossed areas with the colour. So just be mindful a little bit that you can go over the lines a little bit, but don't stray too much. So just a little update on the colours that we've used for these blue flowers. We used the Teal Cave for the darker shade, then we went for the Aqualicious for the mid-tone, and then the Dewdrops for the highlight. I did miss a little tulip flower over the side here, but what you can do is don't worry about it and just go in and just fix it in and colour it up. So once that has been done, we can then move on to the leaves. Now I'm not going to show me colouring in all of these leaves because there are a lot of leaves and stems and little twirly bits as well. So for these ones, I'm going to go in with the moss artist marker just at the base of the image. So be that a twirl, a stem, or even a leaf, I'm adding the moss on each of those ones there. And then once I'm happy with the amount of kind of shadow image that I have, I'm then going to go in with the next marker, which is the olive. And this is going to give us our mid-tone to all of those leaves, to the stems, and also the little kind of traily bits as well. So I'm just going to add those in to there. Once I'm happy with the kind of blending that we get, I'm just using the same technique as we use for the petals. So you're going to go in the dark, then the mid. I'm then going to go in with the lighter tone. And the lighter tone that I am using here is the Parrot Artist Marker. So that's going to mean that I'm going to go over that whole image that I want to be coloured in green to add that really beautiful blending. And that is what I'm going to be using for all of the leaves and the stems and the twirls on this piece here. As I said, I'm not going to show you everything because there is a lot of this. So I am going to kind of cut a little bit of that one. So for the other pieces, so there are kind of background pieces in this that aren't any images. So to say, I could have left them white, but I did want to add a darker kind of look to these ones. So I'm just going to go in with some of the Cloudy Night artist marker to add in those darker pieces. So once I finish the leaves and also the background pieces, I'm then going to colour in the remaining flowers. So for this one, I'm going to go in with some yellows. And what I have here is the fresh lemon for the kind of darker points. And then I'm just going to go over that with the citrus burst. So I've only used 2 colours for these smaller flowers as the petals on here are quite tiny. And here is the image complete. So I'm going to go ahead and create some stacked die cuts now. And to do this, I always find that it's best to use a piece of cardstock that has some double-sided adhesive on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a huge piece of cardstock and then I'm going to add some of the double-sided adhesive from Altenew right on the back. So I've created this sticky piece of cardstock. I'm then going to use the same die that we have been using. This is a Fragrant Flowers die. And I'm going to cut that 4 times from that cardstock that we have with the adhesive on the back. Now I do add a little bit of paper just to make sure that nothing gets mucky with my plates on my die cutting machine. So once I have the image cut, what you're going to want to do is remove out all of the landlocked pieces. I find this is really easy to do with a little pin, but you can get little pokey tools or even die tools that remove all of these little pieces for you. But I do find that my little hat pin works the best, and I just tend to use this because I'm used to it. So once I have that, I can then remove this, and then I'm going to do the same for all of the images. So I have 4 of the same die cuts. So as you can see, I have my 4 die cuts here, and then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to stack these on top of each other. I've made sure that all of the landlocked pieces are removed because it is easier to do that before you do stack these together. To stack them together, all you're going to need to do is just line up the image right on top of the other one and then just stick it down. You can have a little bit of wiggle room if you don't stick it down too quickly. If you do find that you need a little bit more wiggle room, what you could do is you could add some glue stick on the back of the adhesive, and that's going to give you a little bit of wiggle room, or you could just use some wet glue instead of the double-sided adhesive. But it's completely up to you and what you find works best for you. So I have the 4 images all together now, and this just looks so pretty. I could just use this as it is, as it was intended, and you can see just how pretty it is. But I am going to pop that onto the piece that we just coloured. So these little pieces are kind of the backing that I didn't remove quite so well, and I'm just going to pop that into place. And as you can see, if you did go over your lines, this piece here is going to cover over those, and it's not going to look messy at all. Before I did stick that down, I should have cut the image out, because then I decided that I wanted the image cut out so I could use it in a different way. I have to say that if I had cut this out before I had stuck that stacked die cut on top, it would have been so much easier to do. So if you do want to make this card, please remember to cut out the image before you stick that stacked die cut down. But as you can see, it is possible to do it this way. It just takes a little more time. So here is the image complete and all cut out. I'm then going to work on the background. I'm using the Dotted Waves Debossing cover die. Now this kind of pops in little holes into your cardstock rather than cutting it out. So I'm just going to lay a piece of cardstock, this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, just in place, and I am going to add a little bit of tape so that doesn't move around while I do run that through my die cutting machine. So I have this really pretty kind of background. It's really subtle. It doesn't take your eye away from the main image, but it just adds a little bit extra to your card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that panel onto a card base. The card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it's just a white card base. And I'm just using some of the ultra sticky tape from Altenew just to pop that down onto the card base. I'm just going to remove the backing and then line that up on the edge, making sure everything's lined up perfectly before I do press that down, because this tape sticks pretty well to start with. So once that has been done, I can then go ahead and add on my image. Now, as I said before, I wanted to kind of create a different look with this image. So instead of just using it as it is and just using the whole piece, I'm going to cut this down into different pieces to add it on my card, but I'm actually going to use all of it still. So I'm adding half of it onto the side of my card base, and I'm just going to trim off the excess. Now you will need some really sharp scissors or strong scissors because we are cutting through those stacked die cuts. So we have like 5 pieces of cardstock that you are cutting through at portions of it. I'm then going to add some more adhesive behind the bit that we've just cut off, and then we're going to add this on to the card as well. So I'm just making sure that all of that's on there. I can then remove all of the backing from this one, and then we're going to place it into position. Now you can definitely play around with the placement on these, but I just want to use as much as this as I have. So I'm just going to pop that right at the top. Once I'm happy, I'm then going to remove this bit, and then I'm going to use this piece as well. So if you wanted to, you could just use half of it, and you could use another half on another card. But I just wanted to create one, so I'm just adding that into place. The only bit that I have that went to waste was this little strip here. And I find that looks really cool. It gives it a really different look to the die, and it means it's going to stretch your supply. So you could use different dies like this as well. On the same die set, we have a sentiment strip, and I am going to be using the Sincere Sentiments stamp set to stamp my sentiment, and I just wanted to make sure that the die worked with the sentiment that I wanted to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat emboss this sentiment onto some black cardstock. This is jet black cardstock from Altenew. What I've done is I've stamped the sentiment using some of the embossing ink from Altenew, and I'm just going to heat set that using the pure white embossing powder as well. I'm just going to pop the die right around that sentiment, making sure that we have the same border around each of the kind of sides and also the top and the bottom. And then I can have a play around with where I want this sentiment to be. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'm just going to add a little bit of foam tape behind. This is the Instant Dimension foam tape from Altenew. And then I'm just going to pop that into position. I am using the grid lines on my cutting mat behind to try and get that nice and straight. And here is the card complete. I really do hope that you like the card and that you've enjoyed the video and the techniques that were shown. If you do create a card inspired by this, it'd be great if you do share it because we'd love to see. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we really do hope that you have a beautifully crafty day. See you soon. Bye-bye. Hey there, Lydia here. I really do hope that you've just enjoyed the video. If so, please subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, turn on the notification bell so you can get your daily dose of crafty techniques and tutorials just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.